In this episode, we delve into the critical and challenging task of finding and retaining top talent. How do you approach the recruitment process to ensure you attract the best candidates? What strategies can you employ to retain your top performers? And how can you ensure each member of your IT team fits seamlessly into the larger picture? Join us as we explore these questions and more. This is Off the Wire. Welcome to Off the Wire, the podcast that helps you curb cybersecurity risk and tackle technology challenges. We are Anthony and Tanner, two IT executives leading medium-sized companies, and combined we have 35 years of experience in the IT and cybersecurity fields. So, Anthony, how's your week going so far?
It's going pretty good. Just still a little bit of recovery time for being at the conference and getting ready for a new SCADA system, which we're super excited about. How's things been going in your world, Tanner?
Yeah, I've been. It's going well this week. We've been working on a few little issues. Just trying to knock away some of the ads that we're seeing online. I think, mostly ads are a really good thing, but it seems like Google is less and less actually policing their ads. So, kind of more malicious stuff getting into those ads. So we're trying to figure out ways to combat those. But it's been a really good week. Always staying busy. So we had a really interesting topic today that is a little bit different than I think normal. It's not quite as technical, but I think it's one of the most important things we can do. You want to kind of tell the listeners a little bit about what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, today we're going to talk about finding, hiring, and retaining technology employees, which, I think there's something to be said just really with any employee at your organization. But I do think there's a little bit of a struggle, at least the last couple of years, with technology employees, if not longer than that. As IT professionals, we focus a lot on, on technical aspects. We're focused on cybersecurity. We're, working on keeping our systems current and maintained and updated. But, outside of all of that, the really one of the most important things that we do is just, finding the right employees and, being able to keep them and retain them and, grow them as needed. I'm excited. I think this is a good topic to cover. And, I think with our size organizations, we don't do a lot of hiring. So I think it makes it even that more important. I think it makes it more important for us to make sure when we do hire someone that we're getting the right person for our team.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with a lot of smaller to medium sized businesses, you don't see quite as much of the turnover that you see as well. So if you hire someone that maybe isn't exactly what you want, it's you're not seeing them leave and just that constant churn. So I think it's pretty critical, and I think small and medium businesses we kind of have a tougher time attracting talent sometimes. I think some of that's perceived, but some of that is just factual. Do you have what are your thoughts? Like I think we've had conversations about a tougher. I think you're maybe in a different area than I am. I know you've talked about that. Like, why do you think we have a tougher time?
I think there's definitely some variables based off location, but I think a lot of the issues we all share are kind of the same. One is, I'll say this, me and you live and breathe, electric co-ops, but outside of the co-op world, there's not a whole lot of people that know about our industry. And I'll say with this, I came from a large company. I came from Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And there's something to be said that, when you work for a large organization, there's that name brand recognition. And I'll admit, like, I do miss, when I would tell some people I didn't know where I worked, I was, that name, just saying Hewlett Packard kind of stuck out. But I'll say that there's not much more to it than that. Now, I enjoyed my time at Hewlett Packard. And I guess it depends on the type of person you are too. But I find myself I would rather work for a small, medium-sized business. And I'll say this, like, especially for IT folks, when you work for a large organization, it's kind of like being on an assembly line. You're not gonna, we get to touch everything. Being our size, you have to. There's not enough of us, and when you're at a large organization, you may just create and deactivate Outlook accounts all day. You know what I mean? Like, it's there's so many people needed that they break down jobs very specific. Even in hiring some folks, I've noticed folks that come from large organizations that, a lot of times they're not someone I actively seek because they've only done this small niche in the IT industry. Anyways, that's kind of off topic, but I do think there's something there with with name recognition, but I prefer the small folks, and I like working in the small and medium business size industries. But some other things I think that tie into that are impacting us, making it a little bit of a struggle is, one is just being able to the remote job market. With IT folks, there's a little bit of pull for them to be able to get a remote job. But if you're working like with specialized people, like a data analyst or a developer, those folks can get a remote job very easily. So we're definitely competing with that. And I think one of the other things that of the key items I think that impact is it can be pay. I think our organizations do pay well, but I've spoke with some folks, and this is really with the more like the data analytics and the software developers. Those folks can get very lucrative pay with these large organizations. One, they're able to work remote, or at least hybrid at a minimum. But most of them, I would say, are remote, and then the pay can be substantially more. And I'll say this with a developer, I think with like a help desk person, if you got a good help desk versus an average, there might be that that excellent help desk person might be worth 1.25 employees. But when it comes to like data analytics and development, it's not so cut and dry. You can have a good person that could put out like five, maybe even 10 times more code than an average person. So I think I think when you're at the top town of that, you can demand that salary. And it's hard. So for those folks, if we're looking for them, it's definitely hard to, one, attract them, and two, retain them, just because the market's so lucrative for them. But that's the things I see besides just the local constraints.
Yeah, I agree with all those things. To be honest, I think all those play a role somewhat. I think there's some other things. I think with smaller organizations, I think sometimes people perceive that there's less security there. I mean, in our industry, I don't think that's really the case, but in certain industries, I think smaller is less, um, maybe less stable. I hope people, seeing all the tech layoffs has probably changed some of that potentially. You mentioned some things like flexible schedules. I think some people, I think it's a pro and a con. It really depends on personality type. As a more generalized skill set and what we're looking for as a small medium business, I think some people don't like that. Some people want to kind of do that one thing per day, whereas there's others that
Yeah.
seek that out. So I think that can potentially, be something as well.
So Tanner, for the next part, I guess I was just wondering, what are some things that you think we need to do to help strengthen our recruitment as small, medium sized businesses?
Yeah, I know we were kind of talking about this, and there's a few things I think that come to mind. It's kind of the opposite, right? What is a disadvantage? Well, we need to sell ourselves, and what are our advantages, right? So there is some advantage to that small and medium sized business. It is much more of a family atmosphere. You talked about kind of with HP about being kind of, a cog in the machine, right? You just do this one thing, and there's 10,000 employees. You don't really feel like you have that. Whereas smaller businesses, typically you might even know everybody, or if you don't know everybody, you know most people. And if if something happens to your family, everybody's kind of there for you, and you kind of feel that. Um,
Yeah.
I think like also one thing that came to mind was leadership in a large company. The CEO, you probably know who they are. You've never spoken to them, and you never will the entire time you're there. Whereas in our size organizations, I think maybe in that 500 and down size organization, you're going to be able to talk to that CEO. You're going to know his name. He might even know all your kids' names are. Things like that. And I think being
Yeah.
able to, in our organization, walk down into any of the executives' offices and just have a conversation with them, that's not something you're going to get in a bigger organization.
Tanner, just to chime in on that, just something I can relate. That's definitely something that I can relate to, because when I worked for Hewlett Packard, to do a travel request, it had to go through 7 layers of management, and I only knew the level 7, level 6, and level 5. Anyone above that, I had never met, nor ever even physically seen, except for maybe at a town hall, virtual town hall. So I definitely think you're onto something with that.
Yeah, I think it says something to be able to like go in. Our CEO does like kind of meetings where he invites employees in to actually talk to them and hear ideas. You're just not going to see that in that large organization. And I'm not saying they could even. I mean, there's obviously too many people to do that. And I think the last thing I thought about is in a large organization, yeah, you can do a great job. You can maybe have, a good impact, but in a small organization, you just mentioned it with that developer, right? You get someone who's really good, they can have an impact that's outsized of, even the position per se. Because if you're one out of 100 employees, or you're one out of every 200 employees or something, and you really do something, I mean, you can really you can steer the company in a way, or really bring the company along by being innovative. Whereas you don't really see that in large organizations. You can make an impact. It's just going to be much smaller in the grand scheme of what they're trying to do as their mission.
Mhm. Well, I'll touch on the being able to make an impact for a lot of people, for a lot of type A personalities. Making an impact, that's something that's going to help keep those type of employees. I mean, there's different types as well, but I definitely think you're onto something with that. I guess the only thing is, and it's really you covered it, but we've got good benefits and good reasons to be there. It's really just our being able to articulate it, during those job interviews and stuff like that. When you're speaking with people, a lot of times, folks, we've been at organizations for a long time, especially if you've been to someplace 15, 20 years, you really may take for a lot for granted. But, if you work with your HR department or whomever, you should be able to, they should be able to help you articulate, some of the benefits that work in your organization.
Yeah, I think one thing I've heard a lot of people doing now is actually like having that kind of stuff on their website. Having, why do people want to work here? Like unemployment, not really a portal, but like a section of the website dedicated to recruitment and like what it means to be an employee here, what
Hmm.
positions we have, like not just benefits. I mean, obviously we want to focus on benefits. People come to work, they want to get paid, right? But kind of focusing on like those intangible things that we talked about that don't really show up on your pay stub, but really give you that joy inside. I think when you makes you want to come to work. So we talked a little bit about retaining employees. Do you guys, in your role, do you guys employ like any particular strategies to try to retain employees, or have you heard of like some good strategies to do that?
As far as retaining folks, I think a big thing, and I think a lot of this ties into the leadership I've had, but really just I'm a work hard, play hard type of person. I think having a good work life balance is important. And I feel like that's something that was a little, I shouldn't say we didn't have it before, but I think I take a little more priority of people having a work life balance. And I've got some folks that have, thanked me for encouraging them. I have one individual very proud of, for many reasons, but he's just a few. I would say within the next 2 months for sure he'll have his pilot license, and he has he has plenty of vacation time. He takes that time off and he schedules it well in advance. You could come across someone that says no, that's going to interfere with your job. He doesn't do it when he's on call. He takes his own time off. I think it's great, and that makes him a happier person and more content with his life. And there's no reason, as long as it's not impacting the person doing their job, I feel like you should support stuff like that. There's three of us in our department. Like we go to the gym probably 3 times a week, or sometimes 4 times a week. There's some morale boost with that. Also the health. One individual, they were between that and diet, were able to get off all their medicines. Anyways, I think just kind of being a positive influence and supporting people not just in the company but outside the company, I think that can help. There's something to be said just with happy employees. I think they're more productive, along as well as wanting to stay at the company.
Yeah, no, totally agree with that. There's a lot of kind of, the non-benefit kind of things like you're saying, like that, just that relationship building. We do a lot of meals together. As a group, we go out on Fridays, every single Friday, and we eat together. I mean, if you can't make it, obviously we're not trying to force anybody, but just asking everybody about what they're doing that weekend, kind of learning a little bit more about each person's life and like what makes them tick, things like that, that I think
Yeah.
really helps. Now, as far as like some specific work examples, I have a couple of those that I try to do as well. I try to allow employees as much autonomy as I can. because I feel like that's something I would like as well, right? If
Yeah.
they, if an employee needs to, if they're looking into, a problem we have and they found a solution and they've researched it, then, I let them make that call, test it, and then they can go ahead and make the call. I don't have to approve of every single thing we do. In fact, a lot of times as, technology people, we are so busy, we really can't approve everything. So I think that really helps. People like to be able to kind of feel like they're making their own decisions. Um, like for IT employees, we don't kind of say, here's the laptop you get to use. We let them pick their laptop. We let them kind of like customize it. And then, that's something as a tech
Yeah.
person that like people like, right? They like to do that kind of thing. We try to give people leadership examples, even if it's we don't have kind of a way to promote someone, but can we make them a project manager on a project? Give them the ability to actually
Hmm.
lead a project and get that kind of that sense of accomplishment that comes whenever you get finally done with that project and you've seen it go well. We try to be very flexible. If someone needs time, if they need to work from home that day because they got someone coming to their house, they got a contractor or something, then we do that. If they got a doctor appointment and they live 30 minutes away, we're not going to make them drive in for an hour and then go to the doctor and then drive back in. We just let them work from home, things like that, and that we try to do. So I think anything you can do in that regard, whether it's at work and actually like giving them those challenges, and then also kind of the other things like the meals, the like you said, working out. I think it's really a combination of all that. You spend a lot of time with people you work with, so you want to enjoy it. And if I'd really almost spend more time with the people we work with than you do with the people, your family almost in some ways.
Yeah.
And so just making things like you said, just making it enjoyable, making it a happy environment where people feel like, they're excited to come to work. I think that really helps that retainage.
Yeah. Just one more thing, and this is still in the works, and this takes, this isn't, solely up to the department head for IT. I mean, this as an organization, but one of the things that I do think is a challenge that we kind of missed on is the lack of promotion. There's, at a small medium business, sometimes someone's got to pass away before that position opens up. One thing that we have entertained, and I'm hoping that we can make it a plan or an action, uh, make it a plan of action, and that is, a lot of the jobs we have. So we'll have like a system administrators, and we've got telecommunication technicians. It would be nice to be able to have those in stages as people progress. If you're a system administrator, you're gonna, over a decade, you're gonna be a much better system administrator than you were early on. And after 20 years, hopefully you've continued to progress. But just do things, and I've seen this at large organizations where they'll have like a level one, two, and three. So that's one thing, if you got a system administrator and he wants to be a system, or he may not have the opportunity to do something else. I think doing that gives them a little bit of movement and stuff that they can achieve, and I think it's important for people to be able to know if they they bust their hump, work hard, that they can get further in their career. And I think having the different levels of a position, can help if your organization's able to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing I'll add before we go to the next question there is I think a lot of times I've seen people slow promote people. Not necessarily just a promotion of actual like a position, but kind of promoting them within their pay range. I've seen people really take a
Hmm.
long time and kind of take years and years to move people from what their starting pay is to what their max pay would be inside their bracket. And I think that's really a mistake.
Yeah.
I think people, if someone's competent and they've learned the material, you need to go ahead and move them up. I think that also can hurt as people feel like the work they've done or the growth they've had is not being rewarded quick enough. I think we try to be quick to
Mhm.
reward if you can.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I've definitely seen that for sure. Tanner, this is something I'm curious with y'all. What are some things that set you apart from the competition in your area?
Yeah, I think we have a unique area. Most of who we compete with is local government. We also have a higher education university kind of in our area, and there is a fairly decent sized metro area that's about 30 minutes away. So we have some industry there. So I think what sets us apart is we are constantly trying to monitor salaries. I mean, all the intangibles are great, but in reality, people still have to feed and provide for their families. So one thing we do is we do studies where we're actually looking at pay for each position, and then finding out both the market average in our industry, but also the market average just total, including all industries. And we're always trying to pay a little
Yeah.
bit better than average, and I think that helps a ton. Where if you look around in our area, and most people are trying to do something similar, if you move to a different position, there's not necessarily that pay increase that someone might see. And I think that's really probably our biggest differentiator, just local. Other than all those other things we mentioned earlier, kind of those intangibles that we, need to sell a little bit better, I think, as we do our interview process.
Yeah, the one thing I'm happy with our HR department. I mean, we always had great benefits, but they made it to the point where if you're a single employee, like your benefits are 100% paid for by the organization, so you don't have to pay for your medical insurance, dental, vision, and all that. It took a little bit of tweaking with some of the stuff, and we implemented like we have a PPO, but also have a high deductible plan. And anyways, but just through that, we're able to advertise, like your benefits are 100% paid for, at least for a single individual. The pay, I think we're in line with pay, but one thing I have noticed, and I know there's a few of these folks listening, but people that work for like the state and local government, I don't think I'm really saying anything too surprising, but I feel like most of those people are underpaid. And honestly, we've been able to poach quite a few government employees just because they were underpaid. Anyway, so I think definitely being competitive with pay makes a big difference. But between that and HR, and I'll say this, that our organization in our area, we have a great reputation and we do a lot for the community. And matter of fact, that's one of the things that I'm probably most proud of at our organization is how much we do for the community. I mean, we're creating jobs in our community. We're just helping those in need, and we're not just giving things away, but we're doing things in a like a tactical manner to basically enhance our community. And that's, anyways, there's not many organizations that can say that, and that's something I'm very proud of. And I do believe that does make an impact as far as being able to attract folks. May not make a as much as the pay and benefits, but there's something to be said with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think we try to focus on that as well. And I think something, kind of the employees that work there can also be a good marketing tool as well. If you're kind of doing the right thing by the employees that are working there already, then that sets you apart when people are looking for your. Like we hear a lot, and when we have people coming in for interviews, something like, I've heard it's a great place to work here. And so it's like people in the community, either that have worked here or maybe they've retired from there, if they continue to live in the community, they can help you out as well and kind of build that reputation and kind of set you apart from some of those other organizations. So you talked about work from home
Yeah, that's
earlier.
awesome that you're getting that.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's kind of wild. It really does. I mean, we feel good about that because, I struggle a lot sometimes with wondering if I'm always doing enough, right? That if I'm trying with every single employee, am I challenging them enough? All those kind of things. To hear that in the community, as an organization, at least, I know, overall we're doing a really good job. So, Anthony, I know when we were talking a little bit earlier, you were telling me there's been some organizations impacted by the work from home movement, and maybe it's something that we're starting to compete with. I know you talked about maybe your organizations kind of made some changes toward that. What was I think you were telling me about a company that had been really severely impacted by positions now becoming work from home.
Yeah, this was actually a GNT, and for those that are outside the electric co-op industry, it's basically the generation and transmission. It was a statewide organization that did the generation and transmission for all the electric co-ops, but they had, I believe, they had somewhere between like 9 and 11 developers, and his best developers were getting poached left and right, and they were getting like 150%, even 200% more pay. And some of them really loved the organization, but when you coupled that with 100% remote, it was a no brainer. Like, that would be hard to turn down. Doesn't matter how low you are, if you are doing 50 to 100% more pay and 100% remote, you're not going to be able to compete with that. So, I think COVID has opened a door for this industry. I think prior to COVID, like I rarely heard of any organization allowing any remote work, period. It was just a hard stance no. And I'll say this, like, we had most of our positions, we weren't capable of working remote because it was never anticipated, and we just didn't support it. I know we made some quick changes, right when COVID hit, but I will say this, that a lot of organizations, they opened the door with COVID, and then 3 years after COVID, they shut that door again, and they're like, "We're not working remote at all." One thing I'm very happy about, and I think it helps us compete, is we do offer a hybrid environment. It's 1 day a week, but I think that makes a huge difference to folks, and I also think it makes a difference with helping us retain folks. So I think being 100% remote, I don't think that's really would work well for our industry, but I do believe, a hybrid, just to help, some of those more lucrative employees, to help attract and retain them. And I'll say this, I think it really just works well, with all of the technology and stuff like that. Our member service reps, like, they can take phones remote. They can take a phone call just as well as they can, at home or in the office. I really think just organizations are shooting themselves in the foot if they don't at least entertain at least some work from home during the week.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that's something that we're starting to kind of look into as well. I mentioned earlier about us being very flexible, and I think that's something that you don't have to necessarily, if your organization is kind of considering a work from home or a hybrid, I think a really good first step is just being really flexible instead of necessarily a day a week. If someone's got a kid that's sick, if someone's got, a doctor's appointment where they're going to have to drive in the office, or a contractor at their house, letting them work from home for even an afternoon or maybe just 1 day kind of sporadically. I think that's a good first step, and it doesn't really, you don't have to kind of jump all the way in the pool. But I do agree. I think
Hmm.
organizations at least need to be looking into that, no matter the size, really. Especially, I think, for tech positions, because most tech positions are able to do it. I mean, it's not a position where you have to be necessarily on site with to get your job done.
Tanner, this is something I'm pretty interested to see how you guys do it, but can you just walk us through your hiring process, and what does that look like for your organization? Where you're posting your positions, what do you include in your postings? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, like, we've really tried to work on improving this, and I think this is something that every organization really needs to take to heart. And we need to have more work to do. We're definitely not arrived, but if you think about it, your hiring process, where you post, what you include in your postings, that's really everyone's first impression of you, right? Most people are not going to your website and just saying, "Oh, I'm just looking around for places, that might have a job." They're typically hitting job boards. So obviously we start posted. We do post on our website, obviously, but we also started posting on job boards. We started posting on LinkedIn, and making sure that in that posting we're including like those things that we talked about earlier, right? We're trying to sell ourselves in that posting as much as we can, and obviously we gotta include things about the position because we want someone that's qualified for whatever responsibilities we need. But that's a good place where you can create a first impression, and that person, they want to know that they're working at a great place. They want to be, it's kind of a collaborative effort, right? You want to bring the best employees to you, and they want to work at the best companies, right? So trying to match that and showing yourself as one of those best companies, even in the posting, I think is really important. So for our interview process, we do kind of a three-step process. First, we have kind of a get to know you interview. We ask a couple technical questions, but the main thing here is seeing how someone's going to fit on the team. And I think that's something that's really critical. A team doesn't matter how qualified someone is, it doesn't matter if they're expert in something. If your team is not going to work well together, then you're never going to get anything accomplished. So that's kind of our first step. And then we kind of move on to that more technical phase where we ask specifically things about the position, making sure that they know what they're supposed to know about the position, how qualified are they. Mainly, we're just trying to figure out where their qualifications end, right? Where does their expertise end? So that we know, if they're in a certain area, where are we going to have to take them? Where are they going to start from? Those kind of things. And then the third part of that is an additional kind of culture interview with our HR department that I feel is really good. A lot of times, I think I've heard this a lot. There's a animosity between HR groups, I think, and the hiring group in a lot of organizations. And I think if there is that in your organization, then you really just need to be there just needs to be some relationship building there because the hiring group and the HR group should really be a collaborative. They should be working in a collaborative way, and you should be working together. I mean, you want to work together to retain excuse me, to attract those employees. So we work with them, and they have a third interview in our process where they ask questions that really have nothing to do with the specific job role. And what we found is there's a lot of insight that's gained in those interviews. People tend to tell HR more about themselves than they tell us as the hiring group, which is interesting. So we learn a lot about through that, and
Yeah.
then because we have that collaborative relationship with them, we trust them. So if they say, "Hey, we this person looks good, they have the qualifications, but we feel like they're just not going to work out," for these reasons, then we take their word for it and we don't move forward with that person. So that's our process. Is your process like? Is it similar? Do you have some differences there?
It's probably the Yankee in me, but for technical jobs, we start off with doing, we'll go through every single applicant, and we post a lot of the same websites you guys do. I mean, for the most part, it's like LinkedIn and Indeed and like our job board and stuff like that. But yeah, we do take a different approach, and I won't say it's any better or worse. It's just different. I will say it is probably the Yankee in me that does it this way. I'm straight cut to the chase type person. And what we do is after I go through all the applicants, those that I feel are qualified, after looking at the resume, I'll do phone interviews, but it'll be a technical interview only. Like I won't get into, what are you looking at for this job and all that. Like I'll have 10 questions and I'll tailor them to the position. And, some of them I'll say this, I think they're relatively easy. I mean, they're kind of stuff really that most people would learn in community college. How well they retain some of that. But I don't feel there might be one or two hard ones in there, but I felt like most of them are pretty easy. But to me, I think it makes sense to I guess it'd be different if we're hiring for a help desk person, like an entry level position. But when you're looking for someone that's got 8 to 10 years knowledge, like I like to just weed out who knows enough to get the job. Like you should be at a certain point. And so like I'll do a test over the phone, and basically I don't. It's not just the questions have answers to them, but like I'll do like a 4 point scale, and if like I'm telling someone what's a 252 subnet, like how many usable IP addresses are in there, like if they're like trying to step through it and I can see, maybe they forgot a little bit, but they kind of have some of the fundamentals and are trying to step through it, they may get partial credit. I may give them like 2 points if they get close to it, if they're only like a couple of usable IPs off or something like that. So I try to give them a little wiggle room, not just a harsh, it's yes or no, you got it right. But, if they do some effort. And what I found is with that, it helps just weed out people. The last position, we probably had like 50 or 60 applicants. And of the 50 or 60, I think I only did phone interviews with about 10. There was just a lot of people that were applying that just didn't really have any business applying. But when we weeded out, or after getting the 10 and doing phone interviews, and we're doing the technical interview over the phone, that weeded it down till 3. And then we move over to the face-to-face interviews, and typically we do one unless it's really close, and then we'll bring them in again. We've done that before. I do think it's interesting. We've had HR, we've not had HR. I'll say this: HR offers us questions that they would ask, if they can't make it or can't coordinate a time. I do think there's that's something that we need to take a look at. I do think that's interesting concept to have them do a separate interview. But anyways, when we do the face to face interviews, I really don't ask anything technical unless like we're really close, between like two people. I may just throw a couple more things out there, but for the most part, we're just trying to learn about the person and learn about the fit and feel. How are they going to work with the team? And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's kind of how we've done things in the past.
No, I think there's many ways to do it. I think the what you're looking, what we're, I think we both kind of said the same thing. We just kind of do it in a little bit different order. But really,
Yeah.
it's qualifications and team fit really are the big things that we're trying to flush out of an interview process. So when you're going through an interview, like, do you have a list of kind of like some little like bullet points of like these are the things I'm really really looking for? 'Cause I kind of feel like I do a little bit, but I want to know if you also have that.
I'm not gonna lie, like I'm really a hard press on aptitude. I do like people that are just very capable. But with that, if if they're not a go getter or something like that, that's really, it doesn't matter how smart you are if you ain't got the work attitude or the work ethic. It doesn't mean a lot. I mean, it's really just all the fundamentals. We want someone that shows integrity, and we want someone that's a go getter. And I don't necessarily look for like the same type of person. Like our team, we've got a lot of variance in the people in our department, and honestly, it's a very good thing. I do want people that can work well with others, but I don't want like we've got 8 of us on our team. I don't want 8 people that are going to all come up with the same conclusion instantly. It's not good. It's good that you have some diverse thinking. So do look for. I mean, the main things is just looking for someone that has the aptitude to do the job, and I really like people that are go getters and show effort. There's a lot of ways to showcase that, and I don't think it's no secret, but just like the little questions of asking questions about your organization, to see if they've done any research on their side, asking them to can you tell me about electric co-op, and you'll learn real quick whether they've done a little bit of effort or done zero effort. And I'm not saying that always paints the picture accurately, but it is a telltale sign of are they going to be a go-getter or not, just a little thing like that.
Yeah, I think I mimic those. I have a couple other ones that I really look for. If you can find out, obviously, an interview process is an interview process, and just because you're not always going to get, you're not always going to find out every single thing about someone in an interview. But if I can pull out of the interview, kind of the things you mentioned, but also a couple that I really look for are: is this person willing to learn? Have they shown the ability to learn in the past? Like, have they learned some things in the last year? Have they improved their skill set? Because as we know, in a technology sense, the industry is always changing. You're going to have to learn. What you know now is not necessarily, I mean, there'll be some obviously foundational things that are still around in 5 years, but there's going to be a lot of new stuff. I mean, AI is a great example. Nobody even thought about AI like 2 years ago. And now all of a sudden it's a skill set that people are actually looking for. There's actually AI centric jobs now. So we know in technology that we're going to have to learn. So that's something I look for. And then the other thing that we've found really, really good success with is if we can somehow try to figure out either by what they've told us or the questions, if we can flush out how passionate they are about the industry they're in. And I don't mean industry in like, an electric utility, a local government, a small business. I mean about technology. So if we can find out that they are passionate enough to kind of do a technology project, even when they're not at work, or they might help an organization, a
Hmm.
nonprofit organization, do technology on the side, or maybe they do a podcast like us, or anything else, something that involves technology that really shows that their passion is not just a paycheck, that it's something internal and it's really something they believe in. The ones where we have found that have become the most successful employees. And so that is something, obviously, you know, don't ask the question, are you passionate about technology? But if you can kind of infer that as you go through that hiring process, I think that really is something I look for a lot.
Tanner, so are you telling me that me stating that I have 2 3D printers and a bunch of RC cars and drones is not I always knew it was the nerd thing, but maybe I shouldn't try to keep it under wraps?
No, no, you don't want that under wraps. Yeah. No, that if someone was applying for a job, they said that. I mean, I got to be careful because someone may listen to this podcast and do the research, prior to the next interview.
Yeah, I think you've got some really good points there. Showing that they're passionate, that is something, I felt like we've tried to shake out, but you really, you know, pinpointed it right there. Just being able to verify just through them talking, like examples, just are they passionate? Do they got hobbies in the industry or something like that? That would be a telltale sign. I think that's an awesome thing to have as part of your interview process and try to shake out. That's good. Tanner, this is something that we're kicking around is doing a like an intern or a temp, and I'll start off with my very first position was as an intern, and it really benefited me and benefited the organization that I worked for. But with that said, we are just getting ready to publish, looking for a intern. But I was wondering, at your organization, do you guys do temps and interns, and what does that look like at your organization?
So we used to do temps. In fact, I actually started as a temp. I was in college, and what they would do is just hire someone for a year, kind of give them a little experience, have them do kind of the entry level things, and then just move on to another person. But that was really kind of ended right after me. And really, we moved into that internship process, and we do that across the organization. And I found that is very beneficial. I highly recommend any organization to try to do internships if you can. I will say in technology, it's a little tougher because when you bring in someone, let's say for a summer, right? It's they're a college student or maybe, and they have like 3 or 4 months. 3 or 4 months is not a lot of time to have someone like hand off a project to them, explain enough detail, or maybe from a security standpoint, like how much permission are we going to give them to do some sort of project.
Mm.
So we don't annually have a technical intern, but what we do is we look for projects where we feel like an intern could really benefit from that. We might skip a year here or there and kind of you know have one, and then maybe wait a couple years and have another. And this is a strong belief that I have, and I think a lot of other people have it, is to me an internship isn't about like it isn't just about saying that, hey, I worked at this organization for 4 months and this is the internship I had. I think it's about the intern obviously learning and gaining experience, and then us, like, kind of that community involvement. To me, that flows through the internships as well, because most interns are not going to be able to work at your organization. I mean, we have them every summer in multiple departments, but we're trying to, like, invest in our community as well, and we feel like we can train them, or we can offer them kind of a head start in their career, even if it's not with us, even if it's with someone else. Then that's a way to kind of help them out. So really, really proud of an internship program. I think it's something that I would highly recommend every organization to start. We have gotten many, many employees from our internship program, and it's a great way to see how someone works with having no commitment to them. I mean, as much as the interview process, we try to glean all these things we've talked about. You still really don't know how someone's going to work. But now you're bringing in someone that's going to work for 3 or 4 months that they know up front that they're going to leave in 3 to 4 months. They have no inclination that they're going to stay longer than that. So you really get a good indication of their character through that summer on how hard they're going to work, how much they're willing to learn, all those kind of things that we just talked about, what we're looking for. So definitely recommend that. So we had a discussion when we were prepping for this episode. And I think in certain organizations, especially organizations that have people that tend to stay a long time in that position, there's this tendency to want to hire someone a career job.
Yeah.
Hey, are you going to stay here your whole career? Like, talk to me a little bit about that. We had a conversation about that, and I think you had an interesting perspective there.
Yeah, honestly, this is I've got a hard stance on this because I've heard this at several places I've worked at, but I've heard the discussion of I don't know that we should hire this lady because I don't think she's going to be here more than 3 or 5 years. She's going to look for the next job opportunity and move on. I am dead set against that. I think I understand there's some value and I can understand wanting someone that's going to come to your organization and stay there forever, but if you've got a someone that like say if you just had to rate someone on a 10 scale, if you got a 10 but they're only going to be there for 3 to 5 years versus a 7 that'll be there for the next 25 years, I would rather get that 10 and get the and move forward that much more in 3 to 5 years and have to rehire that position, and things can change. But we've looked at people, and even And I've made hiring decisions in the past where someone I know wouldn't stay, but they are awesome at their position. They're very enthusiastic, and they can help bring your organization, like, they can move your organization ahead quite a bit in that short period of time. So I really get I get really really upset when I hear folks count someone off because they don't think they'll stay there for 20 years. Now granted, if you were getting someone there that was only going to stay a year, I think there's a difference there. But someone that might give you a good 3 to 5 years, they can really make a change. And I really think that anyone should. I don't think you should discount those people. I think should you actively seek them out? Maybe not, but I definitely don't think you should discount someone because you think they're going to move on in the future.
I totally agree with that. I think, just to your point, you're going to get way more productivity, way more impact out of the person that's willing, that's one, super talented, and two, willing to give their all versus the person that, yeah, they're going to stay there. They'll give maybe a little better than average, but they're not going to be, necessarily, the star employee. Give me that other person. They're going to really move the needle, like you said. They're going to make the most impact in the time they're here. And one thing I would say is, I think for people who say, uh, you know, an employee is only going to be here 3 to 5 years, we shouldn't hire them. And I say, like, how do you know that? And one, why aren't you making them want to stay longer, right?
Yeah.
Like, to me, like, if you think they're going to be there 3 to 5 years, you're going to get the great impact. But like, maybe you can convince them because it's a great environment, great culture, to stay for longer. It's just hard to predict the future. I try to not predict the future because it doesn't really work well most of the time. I think you hire the best person that's going to provide that impact, and if they move on, then you were impacted and your organization was moved for the better. Even if that was their plan going in, I think that good culture by trying to retain those people, you might show them maybe they've worked at like HP, like you said, and they get into this small medium organization and they do see those intangible benefits and they say, hey, this is like the place I want to stay.
Hmm.
I've been moving around every 5 years, but now this is I found my home. I'm not gonna give up on someone that quick. I'm gonna do my best marketing effort in those 5 years to show them how good it can be to work where we're at.
Yeah, that's a good point. It does sound, if you if you think someone's going to leave, like, put yourself up for the challenge. Like, no, we're going to keep them. We're going to retain them. I think that's kind of flip the script there, but
Yeah,
I definitely think that's if you got an all star employee, you want to keep.
absolutely.
Tanner, I was curious. Like we do the short technical tests that we come up with internally, but I've seen some organizations, and I think you even mentioned the NFL does this, but the Wonderlic they offer a pre-employment test, and I looked it up just to kind of refresh my memory on it. But it's a test, and it tests for cognitive ability, personality, and motivation, and it only takes about 12 minutes to finish. I was wondering what are your thoughts for doing pre-employment screenings, tests like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a kind of a strong opinion. I think if an organization wants to do some sort of screening process, then that might work for them. I don't think that's something we do, at least not in some sort of paper test kind of format. We kind of consider our interview process our screening process, and we feel like we've gotten really good results out of it. So just like anything, I think if you want to implement something, test it, right? Implement it. Maybe if that's
Yeah.
something you're interested in, take a couple positions. Maybe a couple interns would be a good, way to do that if you do have interns and test it out. Do it one way one summer, do it another way another summer, see if there's any difference in like what you think the quality of the employees you get out of it, and then refine your process over time. Just like we would do with any other process we do. Employment is a process. Recruitment, hiring, that's all a process. And if we leave it stagnant, how do we ever expect it to be better? So we need to have that kind of mindset that, what are we going to tweak this year? What are we going to tweak next year once we find out how our tweaks worked last year? So I would just really encourage every organization, no matter if you want to do some of the screening process or not, to make sure that you're like testing that to see, what kind of results you get. So Anthony, lastly, I think we have one more question here. So Anthony, lastly, I think this is something we talked a little bit about, and I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit. Team fit. You kind of said you had an opinion on it, where about your personality types and how you're okay with that variance. Is there anything kind of in the before the hire process, or maybe immediately after, or just kind of normal, process of operating your teams that you do to kind of make sure you're either improving or that that team fit is really good?
Yeah, I don't know that I'll be the best person to articulate this, but when we do the interview process, and this really, this really isn't a team fit, but it's a cultural fit. We One thing we'll bring up, like we're in a hurricane prone area, and we will, we'll straight out ask folks, we get hit by a hurricane, are you going to be good, staying here for possibly a week or longer, straight. So we do that because if you're not willing to give it your all during a hurricane event, then we really don't have a place for you. It's and we understand people that can't do that. It's better just to be, straight up with the person, in the hiring process. And this is one thing that I'm trying to remember. I think it was Christine Miller, but she would always say, clear is kind and unclear is unkind. And I just think when you're speaking with people, especially in the beginning, it's better to be blunt and straight up with a person, and hopefully they're reciprocating that. Just you want to be clear, and most of the stuff with the team fit. I mean, I don't put a huge focus on it. I want to make sure they're going to fit with our organization. But as far as the team, if I see some red flags, obviously that would strike the person out personality wise. But we're honestly entertain. We love to have people with different perspectives and stuff like that. So we kind of embrace that. But I'll say after the fact, as far as working with the team, we do. I think as a company and as a department, we do a few things that help that. And some of these things might have been started because I hold a record for the employee to have left the fastest. I had an employee that I hired, and he worked there a solid week and left a goodbye letter. So we after that we've stepped it up. So I still get rode hard about that. We had a gentleman that worked there one full week, and I guess I hold the record for the shortest employee. But anyways, as a company, we've if you go a while back, we didn't really have much of a onboarding and offboarding process, and now we've got a pretty thorough process, especially onboarding. A new employee, they're meeting with each department and kind of going through some things, and just spending like 2 days getting to understand what a electric co-op is, and get to touch all the departments. So I think that's made a big thing. And then as far as a team, it's just, and then with the department, so this is something, this is actually pretty new, but I think this just helps people, especially early on, is kind of have like a 30, 60, 90-day plan of, things to expect. And I think just having a clear cut plan for the person helps them get on board quicker and stuff like that. But as far as the team fit, we do a lot of projects together as a team. It may not be the whole department, but we do a lot of, like where two or three people will work on a project, and we meet every other week, and like I bring in McDonald's breakfast, probably in the healthiest thing. You can get healthy food from McDonald's somewhat if you are picky. We've had a few people prove that, but I think just us getting together and meeting, like it helps us communicate. And we cover so many things that it's hard to know what every person's doing without doing that. And honestly, we could probably meet every week, but it's hard for us to make time to meet every other week. But we do that. And we had a person. She wasn't new to the company, but she was new to our department, and she's helped us hash that out a lot. It's really just meeting with some frequency, and having those upfront conversations with people. I think kind of help build that rapport amongst the team. Tanner, I'd be curious to see what's your take on that and see how you build upon that.
Yeah, there's a couple things I would probably add. Only more on the. I think you did a really good job talking about like the after, and I would agree with almost everything you said there. A couple of things that I would say in the hiring process that you can do, I think that helps is that that the people that work there that are already hired, they buy into the company culture, they buy into the company mission, they buy into the values of the company, right? I mean, otherwise they wouldn't continue working there. So the one thing I would say is make sure you bring up all of those things when you're interviewing someone, right? And get their thoughts on it if you can. Do they like this idea? Like, talk about your culture. Do they like your culture? Talk about your mission. Do they like your mission? Talk about your values. And I don't think that's, that still gives you that variance that you talked about. You still get different personalities, but you get people, um, that kind of in some part of their being are the same as each other, if that makes sense. So, I talk about this a lot.
Hmm.
Our hiring process, it feels like what we do is when someone gets hired on, it feels like, if you could split them in half, which obviously you can't split a person in half, 50% of everyone we hire has a very similar core because they buy into that culture, they buy into that mission, the value system that we have. Then the other 50% are what makes everyone unique. So so whenever someone gets hired on, it almost feels like they've been there for a year or two because you're like, oh, okay, well, they're bought into the culture, they're bought into this mission. And then you get to learn about the uniqueness, the other half of them, and then that gives you kind of those different perspectives, and that gives you kind of that variance that you were looking for. So I think if you have a really good hiring
Yeah.
process and you actually bring that up during the hiring process, then you can take care of some of those team fit issues that may have crept up otherwise.
Yeah, I definitely think talking about the company culture and the mission and the values during the interview process up front is definitely a necessary step. And it's good to get all those things out on the table. And it's not, when we're interviewing people, it's not just us interviewing them, it's them interviewing us. It definitely goes both ways. And I think just being more upfront and more straightforward is better for both parties. So I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. I think there were quite a few tidbits to take from this, and I know I learned some things myself. It's definitely interesting to hear, you know, how folks are doing this process, especially it being such an important process. I think we mentioned, but this is literally probably one of the most important things we do, if the not the most important thing. All right. Just want to thank everyone for listening to another episode of Off the Wire. And if you haven't, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And we would love for you all to leave us some reviews and some feedback and like the show. So we would greatly appreciate that. And if you want to reach out to us for if you got a topic idea or just some feedback, if you want to, you can email us at show@offthewirepodcast.com. Again, that's show@offthewirepodcast.com. Anyways, we'd appreciate ideas, appreciate feedback, anything you guys want to share with us. And on social media, you can find us on LinkedIn, X, YouTube, and Facebook. So be sure to check us out on those. And if you enjoyed the show, make sure you share it with someone. We'd appreciate that as well. And just a reminder, we're going to do episodes every other Monday. So that's our repeat schedule. We're going to do it bi-weekly or every other Monday. So join us next time. And we appreciate it. You guys listening. Thank you. Bye.